Hi, guys. My name is Dr. Jordan Odell. I'm the owner of Transcend Wellness Chiropractic. I have a focus in sports neurology work as well as functional medicine nutrition. My topic today, allergies. I wanted to bring this up because I know a lot of times wintertime and the season changes, people can get allergies that pick up. And I know other people may have allergies to other things, whether that's pet related, dander, food related things. And either way, I wanted to basically talk to you about how I've helped patients to overcome their allergies or to help get their allergies significantly better from where they were. So, my topic is going to be around gut health relating to allergies, tapping into the immune system, and these different components that kind of all play a role. So, let's get moving here. The immune system. I want you guys to have the basics of what allergies are. So basically, your immune system creates antigens to a substance, usually proteins of some sort of substance. So that could be pollen, molds, could be foods, could be something again related to animals. But your immune system essentially sees what it views as an infection most times than not, something that's going to be harmful, right? And it tags it and it says, I'm going to make sure I go after you and create an immune response, which is a bunch of white cells coming together, your lymphocytes coming together to basically remove this thing from the body. So it tags it. So every time you have that thing come into your system, it's tagged and it knows to go after it. But our environment isn't necessarily harmful, right? Like, why should we be allergic to pollens and things like that that are just naturally around us? They're not hurting us. So, oftentimes, what happens is our immune system can become hyperactive. And this kind of hyperactivity with the immune system is very much so related to your gut health. And that has to do with a big chunk of your immune system. Those immune cells live in, like, right behind the small intestine lining. But there's some other places that the immune tissues are, and they're considered lymphoid organs that basically help the production and activation of these lymphocytes, the white blood cells. So other tissues, and I just kind of wanted you to have a brief review of them. Your adenoids, a lot of people end up having their adenoids removed. Appendix, your blood vessels, bone marrow, lymph nodes, spleen, thymus gland, that's right here in your chest, your tonsils. A lot of people end up having their tonsils removed. So if you're maybe one of those people that when you were young did have your tonsils or adenoids removed, when I hear from patients that they had this kind of procedure done, I always ask, what was the reason? And a lot of times they said they had chronic sinus infections, throat infections, and the doctors just recommended it be removed. And I always asked, well, was there a root cause? Like, did anyone ever look into why your immune system was so flared up and those tissues were basically so overactive? And usually no one really has a response, but that's what I want to know is why. Your bodies aren't just doing things for no reason. There's imbalances for a reason. And yes, genetics always can potentially play a role, but a lot of times it's more epigenetics. It's our environment, our internal environment that is stressing, that has something going on. So that's what I want to kind of get into and explain to you guys on what could be causing you to have allergies. Okay, so the overview of the issues. Our immune system is modulated, meaning modulation. Your microbiome can either help your immune system become ramped up or can help your immune system to take a notch down and kind of calm down from where it's at. Always trying to keep your immune system in this healthy, balanced state. So your microbiome in your gut, your microbiome is going to be your different mix of bacteria friends, viral friends, yeast friends, all these guys that are playing a role in keeping your gut not only healthy, but your immune system balanced so it's not overactive. What I've seen with patients is when we start working on their gut health and they'll come in with allergies like, can't sleep with their dog at night basically because they'll wake up with their throat almost closing, or with their cats, or when seasons change, their allergies become so severe they have to take something like an allergy medication daily just to kind of get through the day and be able to function. What I find with these patients is when we start working on their gut health, figuring out what's the dysfunction happening there, and then at that point, working on it. A lot of times it's lifestyle changes, nutrition changes, and then potential removal of maybe any infections they might have going on. to help basically rebalance that microbiome. And what I see with patients who go through this process is their allergies calm down significantly or to the point where they go away. So I've had the patients who completely allergic to the cats, like I was saying, to the dogs, and then over time, it takes time for these changes to happen. But over the course, one of my patients, it was like by a year's point, they could sleep with the dog and not even notice having any sort of allergy symptoms with it. So it's incredible how much making these changes to your gut will affect how active your immune system is and what it's still basically tagging externally, whether that's environmentally, right? Animals, uh, stuff from trees, the environment, still tagging it or not as a threat to you. So, why the microbiome ends up affecting your immune system so much? So, one of the other reasons too, it's not just the immune modulation part, it's also your your microbiome is keeping your gut lining healthy. And so let's say we start getting leaky gut where there starts to be little holes in the junctions of the cell lining, cells basically lining, right, the intestines, what make up your intestines. And so these little holes open up. And basically when those holes open up, food proteins, other toxins that you're meant to just digest out, now are getting through there. And your immune system on the other side is seeing these and thinking, an infection, it shouldn't be here, it's going to harm you, and it tags it. This is how people build food intolerances over time or food sensitivities. But it's also what happens when we start getting this excess inflammation. People ask, what's inflammation? Well, it's your immune system. It's these typically white blood cells that are overactive and just, we need immune, how should I say this? We need inflammation to a certain extent. It's meant to help us get bad things out. But when we have an overactive immune system, you're having excess inflammation in the system that's usually no longer helping you at that point, but hindering the other cells in your body, hindering the other processes in your body. And that's what I see happen with patients who end up with a leaky gut is this inflammation they have here ends up going systemically. It doesn't just stay local. Inflammation has that ability to continue not only break down the gut lining further, so it's kind of this never-ending cycle, but when it travels other places, it starts breaking down other healthy cell tissues and especially barriers. So your brain barrier, you have a really strong barrier that's meant to keep out toxins, only allow certain things in. When that brain barrier starts breaking down, you start getting toxins and other things that can come through, other things that were never meant to be exposed to these other brain tissues that now are. And for every one neuron you have 10 immune cells. And so you also have immune cells that are now going to be overactivating here to try and get all this stuff out. Now excess inflammation in the brain. That's oftentimes what they're finding more and more the cause of dementia, leading into Alzheimer's, depression, anxiety, bipolar. Basically, your your brain can't function as it's supposed to because of all this excess inflammation and the role it's playing then on neurotransmitters and other things that are meant to be going on in the brain. But that same process happens for sinus lining, happens for lung lining, anything that's kind of this barrier lining that's meant to keep things out. So this is how I see when patients have an unhealthy gut, that it affects even further their sinuses, their lungs becoming kind of leaky in a sense and overactive in their immune responses. And a lot of times people don't always see the correlation, especially if they get allergies later on in life and they're like, oh, I never used to have allergies as a kid. Well, the next part I'm going to get into is this is a buildup effect. Your microbiome being affected usually isn't just this overnight event. Usually there's things that are taking place from childhood on into your adult years that are cumulative and leading up to you now having such breakdown in your gut health that your immune system is finally like, okay, I need to start reacting to all these things because they're unsafe. So let's see where this is going next with this part. So leaky gut can cause leaky barriers elsewhere. And now for this next part, let's go back. Boom, boom. Okay, to our next All right. So, gut health, I know I talked a little bit about this essentially excess inflammation in the system, how it breaks down barriers, and other parts of the body's immune responses start to become hyperactive because we have immune cell tissues that are in different places of the body. Let's see, real quick. Okay. All right. So, this is kind of the light I wanted to shed, and I'll kind of do a quick recap, okay? So, what I find with most patients and most people, their allergies are highly correlated with their gut health. Their gut health is going to have an effect on their immune system. The immune system is going to create all this excess inflammation, and that inflammation will go throughout the body and start breaking down other healthier barrier systems like the brain barrier, like the sinus barrier, like the lung barrier. This is one mode that basically things become hyperactive with the immune system, and your allergies may pop up or get worse. The other side of it is boom. I want to make sure I got this. Got it. Okay. The other part of it was your immune system being modulated by your gut microbiome. So your actual immune system, locally as well as globally, being affected by how healthy this microbiome is. So what I wanted to basically get into is how your childhood plays a role. So this is what I wanted to get into was your microbiome and thus your immune system together, how they affect each other, but also individually, starts being affected from birth. So some things like, were you born C-section or were you born vaginally? Were you breastfed or were you formula fed? So they can tell based on your gut microbiome if they, see it under a microscope, basically. They can tell whether you were born C-section or vaginally because basically the mucosa and the bacteria that's there in your mom's vaginal canal is your first introduction to getting bacteria to start basically the gut microbiome, but also influencing your immune system and immune system responses. So this is a big first step for our first introduction to getting an immune system, getting a gut microbiome. And when we're born C-section, we essentially miss that initial opportunity. The second one is breastfed or formula fed. So we're receiving all sorts of healthy nutrients, antibodies, different things from our mother that's going to influence our immune system and our gut health and how all those things are basically developing throughout our younger years, which is the most important years typically to start our foundation. And when we're formula fed, we're missing out on a lot of these things, but also most formulas, soy based and other stuff that is in there that is already going to take down your gut microbiome, kill off good bacteria, or start manipulating the basically more bad bacteria being in there versus good bacteria to keep everything balanced and healthy. And there are some formulas that are obviously better than others. And so that's something I'd recommend looking into if you do have kids or you need to, start formula feeding. Next one is nutrition. How healthy is nutrition? I hear so many parents say, kid food. Kid food should still be adult food. It should be fruits, vegetables, proteins, good carbohydrates, whether that's, certain healthier grains or more starchy ones. But this balance of nutrition as a child completely influences the buildup of your healthy gut microbiome as you start to get older and older, and thus your allergy responses. So, there's a great book I was reading, The Microbiome Solution, written by this medical doctor who I loved reading about how she was basically this traditional medical doctor, practiced normal Western medicine her whole life until she had her first kid, her daughter. And she talks about all the processes that led up to her daughter being birthed. And then after her daughter's birth, all the issues with allergies, breathing issues that her daughter began to have. And she realized everything started to be correlated back to her daughter getting antibiotics first when she was born, her getting antibiotics when her daughter was about to be born, her daughter being born C-section, her daughter being put on these formulas that were breaking down her gut health. And then the continuous use of antibiotics that the doctors kept giving her daughter, for all these breathing and sinus issues she was having. And her daughter just kept getting worse and worse. She might improve a little bit after a round of antibiotics. Sorry, had to record two videos to make this work. Let me get right back to where I was. So my whole point with the story I was mentioning from this book I'm reading on this medical doctor was her daughter had gotten kind of so unhealthy and all the typical stuff that, Western medicine would think to work was actually just making her worse, to the point, where she was constantly taking steroids to keep her lungs from being super inflamed, and had to have assisted breathing. And so basically this doctor ends up starting to study different things relating to nutrition, gut health, and starts working on changing, her daughter's eating habits, taking her off all these meds that are also affecting her gut microbiome. And over time, she gets better to the point where she, has minimal allergies at this point, and doesn't have to have anything assisted or helping from the Western medicine side to keep her healthy and breathing well. So I just think it's so awesome because it's what I see constantly in my practice with patients, what I've learned about, and then to see, another health professional who's kind of on the other side go through all this personally and have a 180 experience, but appreciation for both. And that's also where I'm at. So talked about how all these things from childhood can play a role. So the last piece here, how do you start helping yourself, right? If you're dealing with all these things, well, kind of based on, I'm sure, the story and what I've hinted at so far, you start fixing your gut, you're going to start helping and fixing your immune system. And a big part of that, number one, that I start with patients is the foods they're eating. A lot of people have sensitivities or intolerances, and a lot of times it takes finding those out first, removing those for a certain period of time as we start healing other parts of the gut, whether that's, infection based, whether they're missing certain types of bacteria that are going to help with the healing process. But either way, it starts with fixing the gut. So next part of that, other lifestyle factors, exercising enough, just like you exercise other muscles to get stronger, your lungs also need that. And water is going to be a huge one. So a lot of people aren't hydrated enough. And I know there is a decent amount of research correlating some allergy-related issues with a lack of hydration. Proper micronutrients. So again, when we have an unhealthy gut, we are not going to absorb nearly the amount of nutrients. So think our vitamins, minerals, and we're not going to assimilate them well either. Even if we're absorbing some, they may not be assimilated properly to actually be able to be used in the system. And a lot of times that has to do with certain bacteria that aren't there that actually help with that assimilation process of our micronutrients. So we need to make sure we have proper micronutrients to allow for all of our other cell processes, including our immune system, to be modulated properly. We have to have the micronutrients also to do that. And good mental health. So stress is a huge flare for the immune system. And I know we live in a society where everyone's stressed out all the time and it's hard. So ways that you can figure out how to deal with stressors, I know for me that's helpful, is exercise helps me with my mental health. Meditation helps. Doing sometimes positive mantras, things like that have been a big difference in my life. So I wanted to offer a challenge up to you guys, something to try. So if you struggle with allergies, I would just have you start off, take note of when you get allergies, how they present. Is it coughing, sneezing, hard to breathe at night, anything like that? And this 1 month challenge, I would challenge you to try going without wheat or cow dairy for a whole month. Drink a minimum of 90 ounces a day, and that's mainly for females. Guys, typically I want you having a bit more, but most people aren't even drinking enough water. So starting out with minimum 90 ounces, if that's your norm, try taking it to 120 ounces. And then exercising for a minimum of 30 minutes a day. That could be, if you're not used to exercising at all, that could just be starting off walking. Could be a brisk walk, could be, mild to moderate hike. And then for those of you who do exercise regularly, well, then this doesn't necessarily apply to you, but the no wheat, dairy, and drinking water consistently for a month, and see if this makes any changes. If it does, and you want to go down this rabbit hole further into helping, go ahead. You can continue to follow me on my YouTube channel, The Untethered Body, and my Instagram at Transcend Wellness Chiropractic. I give a lot of good tips on how people can continue to help with their health journey, making changes in their life to their gut health. And if you have any direct questions, I'll go back here. But feel free to reach out to me. I do a lot of food sensitivity and intolerance testing. I test for the potential for infections and basically do a whole gut overhaul and see too, is there a correlation between what's going on with your allergies and your gut health? Not everyone I could say is the case, but what I found is a lot of people it is. So if you have questions, feel free. You can reach me that's actually my personal number. So you can text me or send me an email. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the information, and I look forward to getting to talk with you more about these fun subjects.